It's always an interesting part of my week when I see those first reactions on Friday when the new Mandalorian comes out. It absolutely blows my mind that there are people who bitched about Lucasfilm for the past 5 years, some of them even building a platform off of doing just that, are now making excuses for The Mandalorian. If you simply changed your mind about Disney Star Wars and have a different opinion now, then that's fine. More power to you. I'm glad you enjoy it. But when you try to tell people who have criticisms of The Mandalorian to just stop watching it, then we have a problem. When you try to tell people that they're thinking too much about things like plot and canon, after you cried about The Last Jedi for the past few years, then you might be a hypocrite. Again, I want to reiterate, I don't have anything against anybody who loves this show. I'm simply asking that people be consistent with their complaints and with their praises. You can't have it both ways. You can't tell people to not think so much if they want to enjoy The Mandalorian. Because honestly, how can you objectively review or give your opinions on something without thinking about these things? It's impossible because that's what critiquing is. It's finding flaws or finding reasons to praise something. It just seems like people are on this high horse when it comes to The Mandalorian, and that somehow they have it in their minds that the show is above criticism. Come to think of it, that kind of reminds me of another fan base. Which leads me back to a previous point I once made in another video about how Disney is trying to turn Star Wars into Marvel. Think about it, they got Jon Favreau, they took the Baby Groot idea and applied it to Baby Yoda, they developed a simple formula that they use for pretty much every episode of this show, and by the end of the most recent episode, they're even assembling their own Avengers. Sound familiar?
Most impressive.
But I digress, let's get into this episode, which features the return of one of my favorite Star Wars characters, Boba Fett. Honestly, with their track record, I'm a little bit scared for his well-being. This episode starts with an attempt at a touching interaction between Mando and Grogu. Obviously, they are trying to set up the heartbreak for some when they are eventually separated. Let's be real though, they will never be separated for that long, and Grogu will always be a part of this show. Because this show lives and dies with the gimmick that is Baby Yoda. Who knows, we might get angsty teenage Yoda at some point when they decide to go full Marvel. That is if they haven't already. But I guarantee you won't see the last of this meal ticket for a very long time. So they arrive at the ancient Jedi temple, and Mando places the kid on the rock. A force field? Is that what it's called? A force field appears around him. While this is happening, my man Boba Fett makes his return with Fennec at his side, and he basically tells Mando to give him the loot. The loot being his armor, of course. Boba mentions that it was his father's armor before him, and they do give some context to that later on, when he mentions how his father was a foundling and how he fought in the Mandalorian Civil War. I don't know, it's probably in a chapter of a book somewhere, but who knows, I'll never read it. So then the Empire remnants arrive and a shootout ensues. Boba eventually gets his armor mid-battle and puts it back on, and I have to admit, it's a bit snugger these days. Boba may have been eating one too many womp rats on Tatooine, if you know what I mean. Anyways, after some fancy blaster work by Boba, the stormtroopers eventually retreat. I saw someone on Twitter talk about how Boba Fett finally looks as cool as everyone already thought he was. I'd like to say congratulations to that guy because you don't get Star Wars. See, there was a time in entertainment when characters didn't have to be flashy or act like John Wick in order to be cool. Boba Fett was originally cool because of what he didn't do and what we didn't see. He was a mysterious figure that handled his business as a bounty hunter, and a lot of times, yeah, he just stood around and looked cool. But sometimes that's all you need is a good look and some mystique. I know this is a foreign idea in 2020, but sometimes subtlety goes a long way. Also, to suggest Disney does Boba Fett better than George Lucas is completely ridiculous. I don't care how shitty his death was. Anyway, Moff Gideon blows up Mando's ship, and he sends down Dark Troopers to get the kid. Dark Troopers are from an old Star Wars video game, if I'm not mistaken. So again, we have Disney borrowing from decanonized material. I thought none of this shit mattered. Grogu was in the force field for some time, so I'm sure at least one Jedi knows of his existence now. They're really gonna bring back Luke, aren't they? So since they fucked up the fan service in The Last Jedi, they're going to try to make up for it by overloading us with fan service in The Mandalorian. Again, trying to appeal to those old school fans. Weird, because I thought we didn't matter. I really feel like they're going to give us young Luke at some point, doing some Jedi shit, and not being an old hermit drinking titty milk on some random planet. Anyway, the troopers make off with the kid and get away. Boba tells Mando that he owes him an unharmed kid, and that he's going to help him get him back. I really feel like the Empire injecting themselves into this equation was an easy out for Boba Fett in his deal, but I guess his time spent in the Sarlacc pit has given Boba Fett a conscience. Mando asks for Cara Dune's help in a Canto Bight-like mission in order to break out some guy who can help them find Moff Gideon. So, Avengers Assemble, I guess. The final moments feature Baby Yoda tossing some stormtroopers around with the Force. Adorable. And then Moff Gideon speaks to one of his officers and tells them to let the doc know that they have their donor. Now, I'm not going to take full credit for this, but I will admit that when we saw those test tubes a few episodes back, I had a sneaking suspicion that that was the early stages of Snoke. So my question is, are they really about to tie the child in to the creation of Snoke? All in an effort to make it look like they had a plan the whole time. Are they actually going to use the popularity of The Mandalorian to try to convince people that they have crafted a coherent story between the movies and the television show? I would think they would want to distance themselves from the sequel trilogy as much as possible, but if this theory comes to be, it's just proof of them doubling down on their shitty ideas. But if you believe the hype, then Jon Favreau is saving Star Wars. Or more importantly, Dave Filoni is saving Star Wars. If you're placing your faith in the guy that introduced time-traveling space wolves into Star Wars canon, then I'm afraid your faith you may have misplaced. This show continues to have problems with lore, with continuity. It has solid action, but like most stories that rely on visuals, it's pretty forgettable after it's over, and I just don't get the hype that surrounds this show. So did you see the latest episode of The Mandalorian? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Thanks for watching. Peace out.